Apex Legends Season 24 brings some of the largest changes to the Legend meta that Apex has ever seen. Today we're going to be ranking every Legend for general overall power so you know who you should be playing this season and who you may want to avoid. We start with the bottom tier of Legends in D tier who are underwhelming, but just know that for me, every Legend has some viability as it depends on how you want to play in the individual player's skill set. So keep that in mind as these rankings are always just a general guideline to the current meta. However, the first of the weaker Legends for me is Seer. Seer is the only Legend for me that really doesn't have any place in the meta of Apex right now. He isn't great for pub play as there are way better fragging Legends, and for ranked, he doesn't really do all that much that is truly worth the team's time. It's nice to find ratting players and always have some intel, but the current playstyle of the game invokes aggressiveness and playmaking, which Seer really doesn't have any place in. Backing up Seer in D is also going to be Caustic. Unlike Seer, I think Caustic has minor viability in ranked Apex to hold up areas and slow down advancing enemies, but for the most part, the assault meta really hurts his ability to fortify up. All the fuse clusters, grenades, Maggie drills, and other abilities has his gas being less useful than ever, and if the enemy squad you are going up against doesn't have this, people are very aware that his gas is pretty much a non-factor. You can walk right through it with minimal issues. In terms of balance, Caustic is a very hard Legend to maintain as any slight gas buff can make him massively overpowered, but for now, I would take any of the other controller Legends. For C tier, we have those Legends that are just fine. Not bad, not great. Sadly, I had to put one of my favorite Legends down here in a previous main of mine, and it is Crypto. Crypto sees a small buff of his drone now being able to destroy abilities like Gibraltar's Bubble again, but for the most part, he has similar struggles to Seer where the game is so fast-paced this season, and with the faster time to kill, there's less playmaking potential for his drone. Crypto has a lot of ranked power, so if you are just playing this, he could be a soft A, maybe a middle B tier Legend for ranked, but for the majority of the game, he doesn't really bring what you need right now. That being said, I still love his drone. There's so much you can do with it, and if you want that ultimate recon experience, Crypto is probably the best for this. Our second and last C tier Legend is surprisingly a support Legend, and it is Conduit. The season of supports was absolutely last season, but this season, they see the removal of faster walking when using heals and double small heals, meaning they are substantially nerfed in terms of their overall combat efficiency and uptime. Conduit in particular though, while she has her moments, her shield heals just are not fast enough, and her controllability via her ultimate isn't as widely needed or viable as a Legend like Rampart with her walls, or even Newcastle and his wall and tactical. Topping all this off, you can now carry more shield cells, and the big healing items are easier to find, which will lessen the need for her tactical temporary shields. We are now beginning to get into the territory where we have some Legends that are good in B tier, which mostly is situational dependent or the mode that they are playing in. The first for me is another one of my most played Legends, and it is the OG Bloodhound. The increase in aggressiveness in Season 24 actually gives Bloodhound for me a little more viability, as the scanning and being able to pick apart where the enemies are pushing from is quite nice. I think Bloodhound is a great pub and overall combat Legend via that ultimate, but if you are looking for a little bit more of a ranked option, I have them a little lower in a soft B, maybe upper C tier rating for that mode. Overall, if you want a recon Legend that has a mix of fighting properties as well, this is one of the better options for what is a fairly weakened class of Legends at the moment. Sticking with the OG Legends and our first skirmisher, we also have the OG Sweatlord of Wraith rocking a solid B tier. Unlike Bloodhound, I find that Wraith is in a pretty much middle ground for both ranked and pub Apex, but the overall buffs to the other classes over the past few seasons, controllers, supports, and now assault Legends, kind of means Wraith is in a little bit of a weakened state compared to her heydays. Wraith is a great pick for those who want some fighting and reset options while also looking for a little team rotation via that ultimate. Unfortunately, Ash's Portal going further and having the option to have 2 charges kind of makes Wraith an even harder Legend to recommend. Catalyst is another really great option if you are playing ranked Apex, but if you are just looking to mess around in pubs, she is less so used for this. Therefore, I put her in B, which is in the middle between these two mode rankings for me. Catalyst in my eyes is one of the fastest Legends to allow the team to rotate via concealment from that Dark Veil ultimate and then quickly set up through her traps and reinforcement. I think Catalyst is one of the better ranked Legends right now if you are playing solo, so if you're trying to grind that placement, she's a great pick. Just note that much like Caustic, all the extra grenades and assault abilities are going to make her harder to hold up areas than previous seasons. Octane for me is in a pretty similar state to Wraith in my eyes. He has some viability to make plays and give you that extra juice and speed, but in terms of the larger picture, he just isn't quite as viable as he used to be a few years ago. Now, the game has spent sped up quite a bit, so this could be good if your entire squad is running it down, and if this is the case, then he can be more like an A tier legend, and his upgrades do make this stim more usable if you do take that damage reduction, and if you do have the need for speed but still want to help with the team rotation, you got that pad to make some plays as well. One slight knock for Octane this season is that since you can carry more health healing items and them being faster to activate, it kind of indirectly nerfs his passive, which is a little bit of a shame. Our final B tier legend is here, and brace yourself, it's a surprising one. It is Gibraltar. There's a lot of reasons for my lower placement of Gibby, but if you missed it, Gibby was an absolute powerhouse last season. Him being in the support class and having those buffs plus all those other things really made him a threat. The weapon meta also greatly rewarded a good Gibraltar last season. Fast forward to today, he lost the ability of that double small heals. This makes it much harder for Gibby to drop the bubble and quickly reset with just 2 shield cell pops. Second this is that his dome is now destroyable again via Mad Maggie's ultimate or even Crypto's ultimate, and the increase in assault options will hurt him a little bit. Gibby, in my eyes, I think will still be a solid A tier pick if you are looking to grind ranked, but in terms of the overall game between ranked and pubs, he's a pretty great legend, but just not a must pick like he was last season. There's other legends that can do what he does, Lifeline and Newcastle, and I think they are better overall. We are now getting into legends who are excellent options, but do me a favor and hit the like button to increase your chances at getting an heirloom, and don't forget, never play with randoms. Hop in my community Discord, you can ask me questions, or you can find others to play with as well. A tier for me are the legends that are amazing, and honestly, this is the tier of legends where pretty much everyone can be used at the top of the game with some success, even though there might still be some better options. Our first legend is one that had a handful of buffs in the middle of last season, and it is Alter. Alter is kind of an odd legend as on paper. She has an aggressive tactical to make plays through walls, and ultimate reset ability to get out of tough spots, but she is kind of reactionary when it does come to this, and she also requires a ton of team coordination to really make a well-executed strike with the tactical. I think this coordination can be troublesome at times where you are slowing things down artificially to a point where you might as well just take a movement legend like Horizon or an assault legend like Ashe. Alter is a great legend if you want to have that backup legend to reset out of an engagement, but as a whole right now, the benefits that a skirmisher legend brings to the team are hard to recommend compared to the assaults or the supports. That being said, I think we could see Alter become more and more viable in the meta where you do get knocked so fast, having that ultimate reset or recall is going to be pretty nice. A legend who I think is flying a little bit under the radar these days is Vantage. For me, she is one of the more solid movement legends mixed with recon via that passive and even assault properties with her ultimate. I think Vantage is a really great ranked legend where if you want or need that long range potential all game long, but still want to have 2 other weapons, she will give you all that flexibility in the world. Also, the ability to scan those ring consoles and survey beacons all from one legend just adds to her usefulness. Being able to quickly reposition with her tactical to get that vantage point is also pretty great. If you want a legend with one of the more unique mixes between the other classes, she is a pretty good option. For the first time in quite a while, Pathfinder is dipping below S tier. The nerfs to Path that he did receive in the middle of season 23 have really hurt his overall potential. While I am sad for my personal main, the 30-second grapple I think is the biggest nail in the coffin. You can really only use the grapple at urgent moments now, as the cooldown is so long to give you any real flexibility or general use. For team play, the nerf to his zipline upgrade to reduce damage also hurt his overall ranked playability, and you can't get ziplines quite as often now since you are getting less of a charge when you are scanning the care packages. All that being said though, Pathfinder still has a ton of use and a really high skill potential to make plays. He's just not that 20% plus pick rate worthy that he used to be. In some ways, I do consider Revenant to be a very close mirror to Pathfinder, but slightly more tuned towards aggressive playmaking. Revenant is one of the better movement-centric legends who can be used on aggressive teams. His ultimate can soak up that extra damage, which can be good if you are heading in first with your assault legend teammates lobbing in those nades or using their other specific assault-centric perks. Revenant's biggest drawback for me right now is his massive hitbox, but if you can look beyond that, he's a pretty amazing pub legend and a combat legend, but less so a ranked legend due to his real lack of team utility. Our next legend I still don't think is a really great ranked legend, but for general overall playability, Mirage is finally cemented in A tier. Whoever thought that would have happened just 2 years ago or even a year ago? Mirage has never been more tricky to deal with, and unless you are truly going up against someone who is in the top 1% of the player base, Mirage can provide a lot of confusion on the battlefield that can be difficult to manage. Quick ultimates and the ability to interact with any of the other legends in-game items like assault pins or survey beacons makes him a more flexible option to choose for the squad. Invisible healing is also a nice little added bonus that frankly can be weirdly successful to use mid-fight if an enemy briefly loses a line of sight on you. Mirage has had a lot of tough days behind him, but I think his future is pretty bright right now. I will just mention that you need to be a fairly skilled player to make the most of his deception capabilities, so keep that in mind if you are looking to play with him. Also, I will mention that while Mirage isn't great against that top 1%, I'd argue that he becomes even better if you are in less skilled lobbies, so really anyone under Platinum, as those players generally have a tough time dealing with his clones. Loba had a whirlwind of changes last season, from all those support buffs and then getting an instant ultimate plus a number of upgrade changes, and while she lost a lot of that, she still is honestly too good, and I think people are sleeping on Loba as an overall character for the squad. Loba may not be needed, and she could be considered more of a convenience legend, but her escapability to reset the squad and get them back up is huge, and her ability to get the team loot in a sticky endgame ranked situation can be pretty clutch. Her passive, I think, is the weakest part of her kit, but if you want a legend that's gonna simply just perform and everyone's gonna love to have more loot, Loba is really great to get kitted faster and take some of the RNG out of Apex when it does come to getting the best gear possible. After Loba, we do have Valkyrie. Valkyrie has been around for quite some time now, and while she's been up and down, I stand by the fact that today she can solve a lot of teams' rotational issues in ranked Apex, which can be very helpful. If you are just playing ranked, I think she's more like an S tier legend for this, to be honest. With the time to kill being reduced, I think the options to bypass sticky spots on the maps is even more so desirable. Valkyrie isn't per se the greatest fighting legend, but her ability to fly around and get unforeseen angles on enemies still can be quite nice. Not a ton to say about our resident pilot. She's still a great option if you need that rank crutch. Apex Legends' best skirmisher right now, in my opinion, is gonna be Horizon. Apex for a long time was a movement legends playhouse, and while we are pretty far removed from those days, Horizon, Path, and Rev can still hold a lot of viability in the meta of Apex. Horizon is one of the best team combat legends due to her lift, and her black hole can provide just enough distraction to still make plays. Her passive movement still feels just as good as it always has as well, and that in-air strafing and overall slippery feel makes her still a legend that many players do have a tough time dealing with. And our last A-tier legend of amazing is going to be one of ALGS Champ's own, Rampart. Rampart may have made it to S tier if she was not going to have such a difficult time with all those fuse clusters, Maggie drills, and other anti-fortification items that are going to be in Season 24. Rampart still, however, does have a lot of match control in her to make cover out of none, provide unbelievable pressure with that ultimate, and her passive is not half bad right now, as the Rampage and the L-Star are pretty well placed in the meta, if not completely busted. If you want what is probably one of the better mixes between aggressive play and control or defensive play, Rampart is going to be the one that I suggest you try out. As we move on to S tier, be sure to drop a comment with a legend you would like to see buffed the most right now, and a legend who you think needs to be nerfed. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the meta. It's now time for the meta and the must-use characters of S tier, and for me, these legends are the ones you almost always will find success with, either in pubs, ranked, or even both modes. Our first is my continuing reigning champion of ranked Apex, and it is Wattson. Wattson does see a little dip due to the change of the meta, but if you want a legend who can control space, recharge the team shields, and stop all those nades and assault abilities with her generator, she's going to be the ruler of this. Wattson has so much flexibility for a ranked team looking to get to zone and hold up areas where I can't recommend her enough. She is not a pub warrior though, so I do drop her down to a solid A tier for this, or maybe even upper B legend. But for the overall game, Wattson continues to be one of the best legends at controlling space, keeping the team healthy, and being an excellent legend at setting the pace of the fights that you take. One of the two legends to have significant buffs this season is Ballistic. At this point, he has seen enough buffs where he is an absolute powerhouse of an assault legend. Since this season is the season of aggression, he fits very nicely into any team looking to pub out or frag out in ranked Apex. The biggest buff for me is the sling. Yes, having 4 tactical charges is kind of crazy, but being able to have any slung weapon to have the same level of attachments as your armor is next level. Previously, this was baked into an upgrade, but if you drop into a match now and throw your first gun into the sling, you're rocking a fully equipped weapon right away. Beyond this, having the faster movement and reloads in his ultimate and through the passive perks and all those assault class perks makes him really just an efficient eliminating machine. If you want to learn how to pick up your pace of play and play more aggressively, Ballistic's going to be one of the best to help you figure out how to speed things up. Last season's premier legend to get more or less reborn was Lifeline, and she is still rocking a solid S tier placement even after all those support class nerfs. The biggest reason she is still hanging around at the top of the meta is twofold. For one, players are dying so fast this season where having the ability to remotely and quickly revive your team is absolutely critical. You'll need this much more often than previous seasons. And second, this is that her overall kit, the ultimate shield, build and fast heals, the team heals with her tactical, and her movement with the passive make her one of Apex Legends all-around greats right now. She's also pretty simple to use and honestly effective in either mode of Apex, which means really any player, good or bad, pub warrior or ranked legend, can have success with her. Not a ton to say about our next legend, but Bangler makes a return to S tier. Bangler being in the assault class is one of the big reasons for this, but overall, her smoke will help the team survive just a little bit more when everyone is getting absolutely beamed again this season. Bangler also having double time plus the ability to also get that faster movement speed and reload speed makes her even more of a warrior when you are pushing and maneuvering in and around the battlefield. Bangler has been a really solid legend for a while now, and this is going to continue to be the case in season 24. Matching the energy of our Resident Lifeline is another support legend, and it is Newcastle. Newcastle is another legend where I think the support class nerfs don't necessarily change what he can bring to the squad. Being able to pull teammates to cover when they do get knocked and provide that makeshift cover via the tactical and the ultimate lets your team have more success to reset an engagement. Also, the amped wall from Newcastle I find will be very useful to zap those incoming bang smokes, fuse clusters, Maggie drills, and all those extra grenades this season. Newcastle can kind of just do it all. He's a true legend on the battlefield. I love how much he has been getting recognized these days, as I even said upon his release nearly 3 years ago that I thought he was being slept on. If there's any problem Newcastle's might have, it's probably his overall size. He can be pretty beamable, but luckily he is a fortified legend as well. Before we get to God tier, we got one final S tier legend, and this is going to be Mad Maggie, and this is again similar to the reasons why Bangler is back in S, and the fact that she has all those assault legend buffs, but also now her ultimate wrecking ball can destroy defensive abilities that it could not do last season. Also, the increase in usage of legends like Lifeline means she can handle or at least apply some pressure through her tactical drill against something like Lifeline's ultimate. While I think shotguns had a little step back this season, they are more consistent than ever with their damage output, meaning Maggie has a lot of viability to use that passive, and overall, Mad Maggie is someone who is going to be an absolute terror on the battlefield this season. In God tier, we have some legends who I deem to be the best of the best this season, and more or less, these are legends you absolutely can't go wrong with using in either pubs or ranked. The first legend is someone who had a little bit of ALGS viability in the middle of last year, but even today, he's an absolute pub warrior and even a great ranked legend to farm consistent damage, and this is Fuse. There's a reigning trend with this list, and it is again that the assault legends and how the game has been overall tuned greatly rewards players that can apply pressure and just force enemies to play into their hands. Fuse's clusters is absolutely lethal, and I find people are still kind of sleeping on it. Getting 4 free grenades as well via those extra inventory slots is also pretty great to bring in some big damage. And his Motherload ultimate is one of a kind to completely destroy enemies if they do manage to get hit by it, or it can at least zone those enemy teams to force them to play the way you want to play. Fuse kind of can do it all, and while he might not be the best teammate in terms of team utility, he makes up for this in the pure aggression that he can bring. And our last legend is unsurprisingly our resident robot lady Ash. There's a lot to unpack with Ash where I could spend an entire video covering how great she is right now, but the big thing is her dash. However, I will also state that the snare is better than ever to stop enemies, and thus you can actually snare and dash to that player, making a big play now. Whereas previously, it was kind of harder to close the gaps to get to the enemy. Kind of had to use the snare and then use the ultimate, which is not great just to use the ultimate to make use of your tactical. But that being said, her ultimate can go a crazy 100 meters, which is honestly so far, and you can get 2 charges, which means you can travel point to point to point so fast, making endgame rotations an absolute breeze. As for that dash though, it has made things really clear, and I think Apex could use more legend-specific movement abilities. We had Revenant get the leaps, Lifeline now get that drone float, and now Ash with the dash, which is one of the best ability to close gaps or create space in a moment's notice. The dash just has an unbelievable amount of ways to help you excel on the battlefield, so if you want that premier fighting and combat legend, there's probably no one better right now. Apex Legends weaponry has also never seen the amount of changes in a single season, so be sure to check out my weapons ranking video when that is live, but until next time, happy gaming, legends.